Welcome to GTM Confessions, where we share what it takes to be a go-to-market professional today. Because it is freaking hard and it's far from the glamorous picture that social media often paints. Consider this show your weekly go-to-market therapy session. I'm your host, Stephanie Cox. I have more than 20 years of experience and I've done almost everything go-to-market related in my career. In this episode, I chat with Jack, EVP of North America at Amplify 5, about when it's time to hire your first sales leader, the role of a chief revenue officer, what sales really wants from marketing, how to deal with unattainable quotas, and so much more. Welcome to the show, Jack. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's been a minute. Looking forward to continuing our conversation.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know Jack, he has a very impressive sales background. And I'm excited to talk to him today about the role of a CRO and what does it mean to be a sales leader in today's world? Because as we all know, go-to-market is harder than it's ever been. So I think maybe let's level set with everyone and talk to them about what it means to be a CRO today. How would you describe the role?
You know, that's a great question because a CRO is a relatively new title in the titles of the C-suite, right? We've had the CEO and the CFO forever, and this CRO, in my opinion, has morphed into this role from really a sales leader. So I think the biggest misconception in a CRO is that they have the C title, so they sit in the C-suite. But in my experience, being a CRO for many years, many times still treat it just like a sales leader. I think oftentimes the board and even senior leadership forget that the role of a true CRO is not only sales, but marketing, customer support, pricing. There are many things that a CRO does, but many times it always reverts back to sales. Where are the sales? Where are the sales? And I just think it's a much bigger job than what most people think that it is.
Do you think maybe the title started and part of the reason for that misconception is because sales leaders wanted a different title that had like chief in it, right? Because you've had CMOs, CFOs, CEOs, but for sales, it's always been a VP of sales. I've never really heard of like chief sales officers a ton. So do you think that's where it started? And by default, people have had this misconception that, oh, it's just another fancy title for a sales leader. And they don't see that it actually could be, or maybe should be bigger and include all different types of revenue.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think that it should be a very well defined role in any organization. But in my experience, and I've been doing this a long time, the CRO, it still is way more focused in on just the sales activity in any given company. And in so many times, it's unfair for the CRO to take just the complete beating that we get on the sales side. When if I was maniacally focused, like in the old days of just running a sales team, I think it would be different. So I think the misperception and maybe what needs to happen at a broader scale is truly if a CRO is going to be in the C-suite, they need to have the power to do the things that the C-suite does, and not when times are difficult. Everyone always says sales solves everything. So I get that and leaning into sales, but what about my responsibility for marketing? What about my responsibility for customer service? What about my responsibility for a proper pricing model that works and scales? What about renewals, right? You know, so when you look at the true responsibility of a chief revenue officer, I think many times the misperception and the confusion is that it's not just sales, but it still is treated that way. I've been in many board meetings, even recently, where their CRO is still, everyone wants to talk about the pipeline, sales, the end results, but no one wants to really understand how do you get there. And it's a journey, and it's all of those things that in concept, when this CRO position was created, I can remember 15 years ago when this was just kind of starting to leak out. I thought, oh wow, this is the type of change that I need because I need to be in charge of it all. But truly, what in my experience, what has happened is I still have a marketing leader that knows way more about marketing than I will ever know. I still have a customer service leader that is telling me they're not that the people on that side of the house aren't salespeople, so they can't possibly renew. I don't want to be inside. So it's still this misperception of where a CRO resides in a company. And I'm not complaining. I'm working through all the challenges, but I think having these open and honest conversations about really what are the misperceptions, and many times what I'm finding is the board members are no more in alignment with a CRO. The perception is you hire these experienced CROs, and I know many of them, by the way, that are going to go in and they're going to fix a problem that these organizations have. And so many times the problem is so much bigger than just the revenue problem, right? If we just fix this revenue thing, things are great, and it just doesn't work that way.
Well, and I think it's because so many times when we talk about revenue, it's net new customers, it's new logos, it's not renewals, it's not upsells, it's not all the things that you talked about, let alone the fact that if you don't have a good marketing engine that is getting your brand out in front of people, how are you supposed to create demand as a sales team and then create new revenue, like create new revenue? So it really does encompass all of those things.
It truly, I can't disagree. And if anything, I agree that um, in my opinion, and I'm very opinionated. I personally think that everything, and when I say everything, bad marriages, your kids are crazy, open and honest communication. And I've been knocked in my executive career by being that guy in the boardroom and being that guy in the executive leadership team that I'm very direct in the way that I communicate, and it's not often received very positively, and I just believe that, the sooner you can get to action in any organization, the better off everyone will be. I oftentimes say any management team, and for you guys out there listening, think about whether you have five, six, eight, 10 people on the ELT. In my mind, I always think that, picture yourself in a canoe and you've got these 8 people around you in this little tiny canoe, and our job is to make it across the lake safe, on time. You know, one person in the canoe that doesn't understand the role puts their oar in the water the wrong way. It completely screws up the trajectory of what everyone's trying to accomplish. And many times that open, honest communication in the boardroom with the ELT team can solve it all. But if product is doing one thing, if marketing's doing another thing, if the CEO has a vision of doing this, and the CRO is only focused in on the end result, which is selling more stuff, it's a complete misalignment.
It is. Well, it's funny because you say that is because I have this theory that alignment is not real, which is like we all talk about it, we all love it. We want to like get in a room and align on things, and then everyone goes and kind of like does their own thing. Product builds what it wants to build, sales sells what they can sell, marketing uses messaging that no human person would ever talk like, right? And then customer success is trying to implement and keep customers that were sold something that the product can't do, or the product no longer does, or now has to deal with, large pricing increases. And it's everyone's just trying to like fight their own battles. And that's why I think wherever it lives, there needs to be kind of like one person. And I think in smaller organizations, it's probably the CEO. In larger organizations, it might be the CRO that says like, okay, here's the go-to-market strategy of how we're all going to work together. And we're all going to like, we're not going to align on this. Like, this is kind of what it is. Sales, if we're going to go after these customers, this is our ICP. These are the target accounts we're going to create. How are you going to go solve your portion of the problem? What do you need from marketing? What do you need from CX? And I think just assuming we get in a room and align on it doesn't ever result in true solutions that actually work.
Well, so I've had many of these discussions in the behind closed doors, and you're right. You're right. You're right. I'm sitting there, everybody's like, mm-hmm, yep, I'm in agreement, I'm in agreement. But then the next level goes to the CEO. It's the accountability of the agreement of your senior team, not the CRO to whack everybody in shape. It truly is this if when the CEO is aligned with everyone's roles and responsibilities, and you've got someone like me that's very, the one thing I've never been mislabeled for is a bad communicator. I will communicate my thoughts and my ideas. And quite honestly, I think the SLT in the boardroom is meant for debate, not argument. But that's the one time a month, one time a week where you should be very vocal. And you should be very critical if you're not seeing the things that you're directly responsible for. And if alignment's off, it's death by a thousand cuts because in this business, every week is a compounding effect. So the longer things go sideways, it's very hard to get it in alignment when it's been going on for a period of time.
Very true. Very, very true. And I always say that the best like ELT rooms are where everyone is super passionate, right? They're super direct. They're very passionate what they believe in. They can have those honest, direct conversations. And you can benefit from what everyone else says because they bring a different perspective and expertise that you don't have. And that to me is where you create like a cohesive strategy for the company and everyone goes and knows like kind of what their part is. I think when you don't have that, or when you have certain personalities that are very passionate and the rest of the group is more like quiet and laid back, that's where I feel like it tends to fall apart and everyone creates their little fiefdom.
People like that comfort of their little fiefdom, as you say, and that's cool with me. I just want results, and it's so challenging. And it's also what I've noticed in my career. I've gone through six exits and an IPO, and all of that's impressive, right? And people always want to talk about the exits, but I've bankrupted two companies. Well, I've been a part of failed ventures that ended up in bankruptcy. I've taken positions as a CRO that did not turn out the way that I want it to, and I do a lot of self-reflection on, what happened with this one, and I can tell you 1,000% it's always been a misalignment with what and also you just take it even back to the interview process, and I'm going to give you a real world analogy that it was a mistake on my part, but I went to work for an organization that and at this level, you're talking about the revenues, where you're going to go. So it never occurred to me because this particular company was scratching close to $100 million in revenue. So when someone comes looking for a CRO, the first thing I ask is what happened to the other guy or girl? What happened there? So once I understand, that, I say, okay, so what are we looking to do? So I had all of that, took the job, and then I was given a pretty good budget. Go out and hire, an ass load of people. We're gonna do this quick. And I'm thinking, all right, these guys have been in business for a decade. They obviously are, hitting almost $100 million. They know what they're doing. So very quickly, I'm asked, "Hey, so what's the go-to-market plan?" And I said, "What do you mean the go-to-market plan? We've been in market for the last 13 years. I'm going to lean into what we're doing right. I'm the new guy here. I don't know what the secret sauce is. I'm hiring people, and, in sales, these are big hires that you make. And everybody always says, salespeople make a lot of money. Well, if they do it right, they do. And that's what you want to encourage. Hey, we'll pay you whatever it takes to sell more stuff. And when it doesn't go right, it typically ends bad for everyone. In this particular instance, what I found out was the organization had no onboarding. None. Zero. There was no way to bring somebody up to speed, and this was a technology company, so a lot of moving parts. So I'm hiring people that are competitors in a very similar space, and these are all A players. And I bring on my first couple, and I knew that I was probably in trouble when they're asking me. They're like, "Hey, Jack, where's the onboarding stuff? Where are the things that talk about how we're different from the other 18 people that are selling the same shit that we're selling?" And when I said, "Well, guys, we don't have it," and it turned out in a little over a year that all of those people, all of that investment, how long it takes to hire someone, they left to go make the kind of money that obviously that they were promised, right? I mean, so it doesn't matter how great the comp plan is. It doesn't matter where the company has been. If you if you don't hire people with a roadmap of, hey, here's what we've done to get here, and you can at least give somebody the format, you just can't hire people from a competitor and say, hey, do what you did over there, just more of it. It just doesn't scale. Yeah, and do it here. It just doesn't scale.
It doesn't. Well, and I think the other challenge too that companies face oftentimes that's somewhat similar is not knowing when it's time to bring in an experienced sales leader. And I think part of that is like from boards and are really bad at pushing that early on in early stage companies, right? Most startups, the founder is typically the person doing founder led sales. And then the board's like, well, we want to go faster, bring in a sales leader. And I've seen that work and I've seen that epically fail for a variety of reasons, right? But a lot of times it's because the CEO is like, well, if I bring in a sales leader, they'll make more sales. And that's great, except that's not what's, in my opinion, what sales leaders do. Sales leaders help you scale a sales team once you know how to sell it, right?
A true sales leader is an extension of the CEO, if you ask me. I mean, they truly understand every piece of the organization, how it's pieced together, all the way from product development, HR, everything. Truly, the CRO has to be a part of all of those cogs in order to understand where the organization is going. It's not one dimensional. Go sell this widget and we're going to be good. Because if I don't know what's behind that widget, where's the product development? Where is it going? How does it affect the rest of the organization? Are we doing 1 year contracts, 3 year contracts, or is it an auto renew? There's just so many things that have to happen in order to scale an organization. But you said something that, when does a CEO, when does a board know when to bring on an experienced sales leader, whether it's a CRO or the VP, SVP of sales, whatever you call that person. And it's really simple, and most people don't do it. It should be, hey, I've got 3 reps. They're all hitting their number, not one
Wait,
person.
they're all hitting their quota?
Yeah, or at least getting close to it.
Yeah. And their quota is reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. Who sets quotas, right? I mean, that was another thing in this very established organization that, I got in. They had just transferred over to a new CRM. So I'm a believer in facts and statistics. So any type of data that I can get as a sales leader in a CRM, I don't care if it's Dynamics, Pipedrive, Salesforce, it doesn't matter. If I can look and kind of see something, but this particular company had just implemented Salesforce. So I had no data. At least we had a tool to work with. And I thought, okay, that's great. And I was given I didn't set any of these numbers. I was given a number as part of the hiring to come in, hire 23 people, and to grow a number. And it's just backwards math, right? The average quota should be this. Do the math out. But in reality, see, I thought that I was hiring to drive demand that was already there. Come to find out, they had one person out of the entire organization that was hitting their number. So they based this growth model that, hey, if that one person can do it, these other 23 that you hire can do it. What I didn't ask, that person had been with the organization for a number of years. They knew the organization, they had grown with the organization. So all of that institutional knowledge was resting here. I mean, that person knew how to go out and sell, knew how to position the solution, knew it cold. But, when I found out that we didn't have an onboarding, trying to get that knowledge out of a professional salesperson, that it was impossible. So the answer is, how do you know when? If you don't have a pipeline, if you don't have a top of the funnel that's at least minimum 3 times bigger than whatever number you're trying to solve, these are all basic equations, Stephanie, right? That any junior sales leader would know, but somehow it's been lost over the years in translation that just because I've got this big title of a CRO, that I'm bringing in some crazy metric that's going to make a difference. If your pipeline sucked before you hired me, or before you hire any sales leader, and you don't have a method from top of the funnel, where's this stuff coming from? Whether it's trade shows, whether it's marketing, website, I don't care. But if you don't have a command of top of the funnel, it doesn't matter how many people you hire, you're never going to get the results.
No, I completely agree, and I think I love that that you said that you should have 3 reps, like hitting quota or close to hitting quota before you bring in a sales leader, because I think that is what CEOs and board members need to hear. Because instead, they're like, "Oh, well, we'll hire one, and they'll be a player coach. Oh, you'll do all of it. You'll you'll eventually hire a team, but you'll also carry a bag." And I've personally never seen that be successful
It's
for a
amazing to
variety
me
of
that that
reasons.
model is still so many of these startups. That's still the approach, right? Is player coach. We're on a limited budget, and in my mind, when I hear that now, I want to say, hey, if you're on a limited budget, the best thing that you can do is to make sure your model is scalable. I mean, can you the player coach thing? I could argue with anyone it doesn't work, but let's just say that you want to go down that road. Okay, what are you doing to feed these people? Where are where's the marketing creation? Because another thing, another just misconception in this world that we're in of sales is, I'm going to hire a six-figure salesperson, which is very common these days, right? Even these kids out of school with zero understanding of the world are commanding, six-figure salaries. So, in this analogy, you're hiring someone and you're paying them, a six-figure salary. Do you really want that person, spending half of their day on LinkedIn Navigator, trying to figure out how to get in touch with Jack Wilson, what's his mobile number, how do I get in touch with him, and then I'm going to send him an email that's going to be completely ignored? Is that the way you want to run your business? It's lunacy that you think that just because I'm paying this person this rate, which is market rate, that they can do all of the things other than be a professional salesperson. It just boggles my mind.
Well, that's an interesting point. So tell me about, in an ideal world, what should marketing be doing to get the pipeline ready for sales? And then at what point does sales take over and what are they responsible for? Because I think that's part of the challenge in today's world. There's been so much technology that allows marketing to do personalization. There's we could talk forever about like all these automation, outbound cadence tools that exist. But what exactly do you think is the role of marketing? And then where does sales come in and what do they take over?
Yeah, and I may be underqualified because, again, I'm not a marketer. I've worked with a lot of marketers. I believe the most successful scenarios that I've been in, and the exits that I've had, I can speak from experience. When sales and marketing are completely aligned. I've always looked at sales and marketing as peanut butter and jelly, all of those analogies, the Oreo cookie. When done right, it's great. Typically, it's done horribly wrong, and that's the reason people struggle with it. But in my opinion, sales and marketing need to be aligned on whatever the mission, vision, and vision is. And when those things are aligned, when sales and marketing are aligned on whatever the mission, vision, and vision is, is, and they're working on what are these campaigns, and it's not marketing doing it in a bubble, because marketing typically what also happens, I make my marketing people always early on in any of these gigs that I get. I make sure that marketing sits in on sales calls so they hear from the customer what's going on. And it's always amazing. It's only a couple of calls that it takes, and marketing immediately says, "Oh shit, man, that's a different, I didn't know that." And they don't know it because they sit up here and they're doing things from either reading books, reading shit online that has no impact on the business. No matter what anyone says out there, the customer is right no matter how wrong they are. Perception is reality. And a customer wants to, and I think in this new world of AI, which I want to talk about in a minute, that the marketing message is way more important now than it ever has been, because the people that we're selling, the end user of any solution or product, they're way more sophisticated now than they were 5 years ago and they were 10 years ago. There's not a person out there that's standing in line to buy the solution that I've got. And I'm representing a wonderful solution today, the fastest growing BPO in Cape Town, South Africa. All that's great. No one cares. No one cares, because they're going to go and they're going to look, because it's so easy now to do research on anything that you buy, you ingest, that you want to take a vacation. People are way more sophisticated. So that's where marketing comes into play. That's where an articulate website talks about your message, who you are, what you do. There's just way too much bullshit marketing fluff that exist in the world today that, in my opinion, means absolutely nothing. People don't want that garbage. People want to say, hey, these guys do this, this, and this. That's it. And this is the price they do it for.
Exactly. Well, and it's so funny that you say that because I go on all these tech websites and I'm like, but what do you do? Like, I understand the buzzwords, but I don't know what you do. And I love the idea of listening to sales calls. And that's something I've always done in my marketing career. Is I like to be like peanut butter and jelly with sales, because if you listen to prospects and customers, you're going to hear them talk about your solution in real words that then you can actually use, versus these like fluff buzzwords that, like we orchestrate this, we do this and this. And I'm like, no, like, just what problem do you solve? How do you solve it? How do you solve it differently? Like, it's literally that simple. So I always love to even ask customers, how would you describe what we do? Like, if
That would be such an eye-opening thing, because most customers that we're dealing with know more about the solution, maybe not your solution. They know more about the solution that they're wanting to invest in than most salespeople know about their own solution, because they're articulate buyers now, right? They're going to go out and they're going to make sure that whoever they're dealing with, I'm dealing with six people, and they can easily weed through that and say, oh, these guys don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't fit my model. These guys don't have the right price point, and they just go through it. I mean, so you can't bullshit the end user anymore. There's way too much information out there, and there are way too many people doing the same damn thing saying they're different.
Yep, exactly. The other thing is that so much of that conversation and evaluation happens before they ever talk to your sales team. A lot of buyers today, right, are talking, like, I call them like, and the DMs and the text messages. And I do that when I'm looking at a solution. I'll reach out to a couple of people and be like, who do you use? What do you think? And that's even before I go to the company's website, request a demo, create a free account, any of the things that would like be a hand raiser for sales. So thinking about that, and that's where I think marketing, there's like a ton of importance around building brand and getting your product and your messaging super tight and everywhere. What do you want from marketing? Do you want them to, like, do you want demos booked? Do you want leads to follow up on from like content downloads, trade shows? Like, in your ideal world, what should marketing be giving the sales team that you don't go, that's shit, please stop doing that?
let's break marketing into the different areas of a marketing function too, right? So you've got, that's another misconception because people put marketing into this bucket, and then they're always the first, hey, we haven't sold, revenue is down, we need to cut somewhere. And because no one really understands marketing, marketing is always the poster child for job cuts. It's unfortunate, but the reality, in my opinion, is the marketing is always the most underfunded piece of any organization. And if these CEOs and board members truly understood the value of marketing, and I think the disconnect is, marketing's never sold a deal. I hear that all the time. It's the sales guys that are out there. They're on an airplane. They get 18 no's to every yes. I've heard all that shit before, and it's true. But marketing is the one leg of the stool that should always stay. Period. And if anything, you need to lean more into it. But within marketing, you've got website, you've got trade show, you've got content, you've got sales playbooks which also goes into the product side of the house, and the IT side. So marketing also touches everything in the organization. So when I'm looking for a solid marketer, it's finding that person that's in alignment because again, so many times these marketers have been just completely abused and beaten up in their career, and they come into these gigs, like, don't hit me anymore. I know that I'm not going to get the budget that I want. So they're always being asked to do more with less, which is, and many times that's the way their career starts in an organization. And I think that also just needs to be analyzed in any organization, but especially these startups that are getting funding. That so, I know that revenue is critical for anyone, and I know that sales is the way that you judge that. But without a strong marketing and sales alignment, you're just never going to get the results that you want. And it comes with finding the right sales leader that understands the marketing piece of it. But the best marketing, in my opinion, that has always worked for me is being very in tandem. And even in my senior management, I have marketing in on all of my calls. So even my forecast calls that I do once a week, I want my marketing leader there so that I'm not just saying, hey guys, sales are down, the funnel is off, we need to do this and that. I want them to hear the frustration from the sales reps. I want them to hear, hey, I went into a very competitive situation and the competitor had had all this information on us. Where did they get that from? They've got a sales playbook on the three people that could, you've got to have a very robust sales toolkit, and organizations have this stuff, this institutional knowledge, like the thing that I told you about, the kid that was the number one sales rep. He had all that. He created his own marketing that worked for him. And it's just crazy how organizations they do this in a bubble, but a true marketing person. And then you got to have some, who does the trade show stuff. Is that a sales rep? Or is that marketing? Who's going to ensure that those leads that everyone scanned at a trade show are put into a CRM and that does the slow drip? Is that marketing or is that sales?
Well, who do
You
you
know,
think it should be? I have an
well,
opinion, but
I,
we'll go
I,
first.
I,
You go first.
I think that when you're at a trade show, there are different types of leads too, and the word leads drives me crazy, right? I
Same.
mean,
Can we make
you
it
know,
die?
yeah, yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
everything is dying today on the internet. So can we just say like leads are dead too?
yeah, leads are dead, and I'll tell you the coldest, deadest lead is the person that you scan at a trade show that, they're back. You can't even see their name, so it looks like, like who the hell is this? Oh yeah, Stephanie. Bang. And at the end you say, hey, I scanned 180, and this thing, 180 leads. And I'm like, that's bullshit. These 180 leads, none of them are probably going to turn into anything. So you put them in the top of the funnel, HubSpot, and you start doing these drip campaigns. That's 100% marketing, right? That's not a sales activity. And then when that person raises their head, it should be qualified by a BDR, depending on how sophisticated your sales organization is. But again, remember, you just hired this six-figure rep. So, and you're wanting results. Do you want this six-figure rep doing marketing shit that they're completely underqualified for? They don't know what they're doing. Do you want them sending out, 5 email cadence to the, no. You want that automated. You want to use technology. And then even then, when that person comes in, you want them qualified from someone instead of going to this high-priced person that's your closer. That person, you've got to be able to hand a sales professional something to work with. And it can't be, hey, you got to go rent the boat, you got to go rent the fishing equipment, you got to, get the tackle, you got to put it on the hook, you got to sit there for 8 hours, wait for the fish to catch, reel it up, then take the fish off, cook it, feed everybody. Your unrealistic expectations. The way that it should work is that BDR person says, hey, I talked to Jack at the trade show. I'd be very interested in learning more about your company. And that BDR is like, uh-oh, I got one on the hook here. Okay, let me ask some questions. And then if they get, hey, are you the person responsible for making this decision? Sure am. Do you have budget for this? No, we don't have any budget, but we're just trying to find the more information you can get to hand to that salesperson, it just supersedes all of that nonsense that it took to get to that point. But all of that's marketing. That's that drip campaign. That's that slow touch approach because I don't know who out there, and maybe I'm going to get, lamented with this, but, this is not anything I've ever sold. It's not a one conversation sell. Unfortunately, I've never sold anything that dynamic that people say, holy shit, I've got to have that and buy it now. Gartner says that it takes anywhere from 6 to 11 touches to get to where you want to be. 6 to 11. So think about, me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, I get inundated with in mail, every day. There's not a day that goes by that someone's not trying to sell me something that I don't need. However, the people, I just engaged with some kid that he was very persistent, very professional, probably hit me 8 or 9 times. And I said, you know what? I just want to talk to this kid because he is unrelenting. And I listened to his pitch. I gave him critique and I said, hey, listen, the only reason I took this meeting is I think you're a very good sales professional and I don't see them that often. I want to give you encouragement for doing a good job. What you've got, it's not a fit for me, but I want it to take the time out instead of just, ghosting you like I do with most people because you've done your job and you've risen up and you've made it to a point where I'm like, this person, he was special. And I highly encourage anyone out there that even if it's a solution you don't need, when you run across that professional salesperson, encourage them because in what we do for a living, it's very non unforgiving and we get beat up way more times than we see success. So encourage the people that are doing the right thing to keep doing it. And I do that frequently, but the point of that is we get hit with so many different people trying to say, look at me here, look at me there. So when you do it, it goes back to marketing. The messaging has to be spot on. It has to be different. You can't just kick the can down the road and be average if you're looking for extraordinary results.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was around this idea of like sales professionals are closers. And I wonder if that's part of the problem is that oftentimes we don't think about that as that's their sole job is to close deals. And if we did, and we hire really talented closers, you theoretically need less of them if you and it could invest more in marketing and then in wherever like the SDR BDR role sits because in reality if you're handing sales professionals who are exceptional at closing deals that are actually workable, not like Bob that you met at a trade show who got his badge scanned and has no interest or downloaded a content book that he didn't care about, right? I think you'd have a very different situation. I think you'd be able to measure sales effectiveness a little bit better because right now what's the problem with sales? Is it the sales team? Or is it you don't actually pass over the right people from marketing to sales? Are you expecting sales to do more than they should be doing, right? And so I wonder if you start thinking about sales as like, those are the closers. And you don't bring in a closer until you have something to close.
Yeah, it goes back to any organization. You start off, and I've co-founded my own company, so I was the guy that did it all, right? From marketing to sales to cleaning the toilets, and when you grow an organization like that, you know where you're going. But you've got to be able, if you're going to grow sales in any capacity at all, you have to understand how did you get there. And let's talk about a closer a minute in sales and the misperception of sales. I personally think sales is a very straightforward profession to be able to judge, right? But you have to have a realistic expectation on the solution, the product. What are you selling? I was just talking to a CEO last week, and he said to me, he said, "Hey man, it's taken us 2 years to get to this point." But the next breath out of his mouth was, "I've hired this sales team, and I just don't see the results." And I said, "Well, how long have they been in place?" 6 months. And I'm like, "Well, you know what? Maybe your expectation is off a little bit, because it doesn't matter how good you're hiring. You get someone that A plus person. People just aren't sitting around saying, 'Hey, Jack's over there now. I'm going to take my book of business over there because I like Jack.' There's got to be a fit. There's got to be a need, and the solution still has to fit. So I think the realistic expectation. You had said something earlier about quotas. Another thing, just for anyone out there listening, that's maybe a sales rep and says, "Hey, how did I get stuck with this number? Where the hell did this come from?" I'll tell you where it came from. You know, at the senior level of any organization, they say, "Hey, we need to grow by 30% next year." Okay, 30%, real simple, math. Get out the cipher and stick and start saying, "All right, I've got to do this. I've got to hire 6 salespeople, and the only way to do that is a realistic quota of 1.2 million." Because the number one guy in the company that's been here for 6 years, he does it every year. So that seems like a really realistic quota to have, because he's doing it. We don't have a clue how we're going to train you, but if that guy can do it, we just figure anyone else can do it. So it still goes back to the expectation of, it's not a people problem organizations have, it's the communication of understanding whatever solution I'm selling, how do you get that knowledge into, and it should be a crawl, walk, run in any organization, right? I mean, you should be given quotas. Another thing that people do, they hire someone 6 months in, and they've got a quota that's so completely unrealistic, because no matter where you are, it's going to take you a quarter, 2 quarters to just kind of figure out what's going on, but yet you're still carrying a fully burdened quota because the revenue was set to a point where they've got to at least have a placeholder for it in the term sheet. Weird way of doing business.
But that's what I feel like all startups and scale ups do is and I think it starts like at the VC board kind of level where they're like, "Oh, well, you did whatever millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. You need to triple that next year, and then you need to triple it again, and then we're going to double. And so that's the expectation for you to be a high growth. We're going to assume most people aren't going to hit their quota, so we're going to need to hire more people." And I'm just like, what if we didn't do that? What if we actually just sat down and said, how big is our target market? How many people exist? What's our average deal? How many do we think we could actually sell to realistically? What if we built a business like that instead of just this made up financial model, which is what they're doing, is they're putting numbers into a spreadsheet with these dreams of, I want to grow, I want to triple, I want to double, I want to grow by, 50% next year, whatever it is. And it's not realistic for a variety of reasons. And then I think it kind of all flows downhill, right? Sales gets it because they get unrealistic quotas. Sales leaders are asked to hire more people that have no chance of probably hitting their quotas. And so they're going to leave. So all the time you invest in them over the next year or two is going to be worthless. And then marketing is being asked to do more with less. And but they have to bring in like even more people than they ever thought of. So their solution oftentimes, and I've been guilty of doing this in the past, is like, okay, you need more leads. I can get you more leads. I mean, I don't think they're going to buy from us, but sure, here. Right. And then it's like, but the lead number looks great. It doesn't actually result in anything. But it's this vicious cycle. So how do you get that to stop? Like, how do we have honest conversations about what a financial target should be for the business in terms of revenue, both from new logos, but then also renewals and expansion?
So you had mentioned VC and private equity. I've spent a lot of time raising money in my career, and just like in any business, there's some really great VCs and some really good PE firms, um, and there are some really bad ones out there. I want to, any VC or private equity guy that's listening to this too, you guys need to be more involved. I hate when I'm in a board meeting and I'm dealing with somebody that obviously has been successful in their career. They have a lot of contacts. It should be if you're investing and you're sitting on a board that you've got a vested interest to help. Not just once a month, cast stones and say, the numbers are off, we're doing this and that. No, open up your Rolodex. Help me out. That's the credibility. If you truly are investing in this company and you believe in it, then you need to get your hands dirty too. You need to help. And here also, I don't, and again, not casting stones at these at private equity and VC. How many of you guys have ever sat on a phone call with a sales rep for a company you're representing and heard a customer completely frustrated with customer service, with I don't understand your solution. I mean, how many times do you guys do that? But then you sit in a board meeting once a month and you're making decisions based off of what? It's not off of anything that you've heard. It's other people telling you what's going on. So again, I think that the miscommunication, it's a reset, if you ask me, Stephanie, that more people that have the experience that we've got, we need to start holding people accountable and everywhere from the interview up. And we need to start having these open, honest conversations. I can honestly say anyone that hires me these days, they're getting a much more sophisticated Jack in the way that I come about it because I know what my strengths are and I know what my weaknesses are. And it's going to take somebody else a long time to find it out. So I'm just like, I'm just going to tell you honestly, this is my view of the way it should be structured. And if you don't want to do it that way, I'm probably the wrong guy to come work for you because I know that if I am given the freeway to do what I know is right, you will get results. And I'll put my job on the line for it. But so many times people in our role, we put our job on the line for things that are completely out of our control. And it goes back to the expectation, right? If you want me, I was talking to a senior level recruiter that's a friend of mine, and she was telling me that the CRO role is being rethought in many organizations because it's too much shit for one person to manage, and they're starting to see these results. I came up as a salesperson. I am a sales leader, and it's like the one thing that I was, like great at. What do you do to your number one sales leader? You promote them into management, right? That's the normal thing to do. So you're going to take the guy that was slaying individual sales, and you're going to put him into management. In my case, it was a kind of a rough transition, but I found out that I truly do like helping people more, especially as I got older. So I loved it. But why would you do that in a normal, sales thing? If let that person continue to sell. Number one, if you're on that cusp, you're going to make way more money with a lot less aggravation. So stay in sales, if that's your mojo. Because when you get into senior management, you're just really dealing with all of the other dysfunction in the organization and you're trying to make it look better. and you're trying to fix it. But so many times this stuff's out of a CRO's remit. So according to this recruiter, he's like, listen, CROs are getting fired right and left for underperformance. And he said, it's not their fault. He said, I literally am sitting on a stack of extremely talented people that have done this over and over again. And he said, in my opinion, the disconnect is unrealistic expectations. And those unrealistic expectations go all the way back to the VCs and the private equity. They invest in a company and they're expecting unrealistic growth. I think people need to slow down and really understand what it is and have realistic expectations. And, and I know that's not the world we live in, right? People are going to drive, and push. But is there anyone out there that can tell me consistently that they've done A, B, and C and they've done this? It just doesn't work that way. It's not a linear progression. There's always going to be challenges, struggles, but it goes back to open, honest communication within the organization. That's where it needs to start, is having those conversations.
It does. And I would love to see organizations go to your head of sales, your head of marketing, whatever their titles are, and say the two of you get in a room with CX and you guys tell me what you think revenue can be next year. What do you think is realistic? And then bring that to the CFO and the CEO as a starting point, because that's not the way it happens, right? It happens very much top down, board down, typically, and then it's given to you. I would love to see it come from the teams that are actually going to be responsible doing it and what they
Guarantee
would
you,
say.
if there was an A/B test on it, the model that you're talking about, in my heart of hearts, I know that that would get better results. Just I know it.
I agree. Well, and I think it would also create better culture because it would be everyone knows when their unrealistic results are being given or goals are being given to the team. So I think when you have realistic goals, even if they are feel like a stretch to some extent, everyone feels more motivated to go out and hit them because they can see how it is possible. They don't assume there's no way we're going to be able to do this. This is crazy, but we'll try our best, which I think is unfortunately what a lot of leaders are stuck with today is goals that there's literally no way they can hit, but they're going to try to get as close as they possibly can.
Yep. Yep. I mean, listen, I've stood up on many sales kickoffs doing the rah rah speech. Hey, but many times I've been giving that speech, and in my mind, I know that we don't have the infrastructure set up to hit the goal. And and there's not a sales leader out there that's not been in that position. Sometimes brute force and strength can push it through. But another thing that we haven't talked about that I've seen resistance probably these last 5 years is in sales there's a very easy way to judge success, and that's selling, correct? So if you're not getting the sales, and it's also KPIs. Like I can tell on a weekly basis if you're a sales leader and you're looking at the metrics, right? I mean, liking, don't liking, the Elon Musk approach. Hey, what are the 5 things that you've done this week to push the ball forward? Seems simple and basic, but that's a great indicator. And then when you look in and you say, hey, this rep has had a lot of activity, they may not be hitting their number, but I know it's a top of the funnel activity game. I once took a job with a company out of Denmark, and the CEO said, hey, the first thing you've got to do is I want you to fire this guy. And I said, wait a minute. I said, why would why, I said, I don't want to be the hatchet guy. I don't want to start out my career here by coming in and firing this guy. And I said, what's the problem with this guy? He said, man, the guy's been here for 2 years and he hadn't sold anything this past year. Hadn't sold anything. And I said, well, listen, I don't want to be the guy that comes in and does the bad thing. I tell you what, he'll be the first guy that I work with. So I'll travel with him and let me give you what I think. He said, okay. So I go out, spend 2 weeks on the road in Texas, going on sales calls. The guy was excellent. I mean, knew his shit in and out. Just, I mean, was an expert. You know what he was horrible at? Closing. He couldn't close an elevator door. I mean, couldn't do it. So I I can remember sitting in the car with him, and just saying, "Hey, man, what did you hear in this call?" And he talked, and I said, "Everything." I said, "But, this next call, I want you to do just one thing. Just one thing. Let's tweak it a little bit because you literally know way more than anyone in the company. So we've got the content down. You know what you're talking about. Don't talk so much. Ask some open-ended questions. And at the very end, let's ask for the business. Let's see what happens. Let's just see what happens. Ask for next steps. Let's do something." Swear to God, just Murphy's Law. The very next call, the guy did what we talked about, and we got a deal. We got a deal, and all he did was ask for the business. So the analogy is, right? Don't look at when you're looking at numbers and statistics, and you don't have either the interest or the time to just sit down and understand. This guy he had hired him. The CEO had hired this guy, had worked there for 2 years, and had never taken the time to go on a sales call with him, right? I mean, as a sales leader, you can't operate from behind the desk. You've got to go in. I mean, I'm 58 years old now. I've got a tremendous amount of knowledge, and most of it's due to no's in my career. No, we're not buying because you were too expensive. No, we're not buying because your solution doesn't, a lot of no's. But you learn from that, and you can course correct. And I'm happy to say that individual now is leading a very robust global sales team. Um, and so that happens, but the analogy is you just got to slow down, and it's not always just black and white. That person that's not successful, there's a reason why they're not successful, and chances are it's your fault, company. Chances are you haven't given them the tools they need to be successful. And if you have, also listen, if somebody took this thing of being in sales and they understand that you're being judged by your quota, your number, and if it's not working, I've never terminated, and unfortunately I've terminated, my share of people. I've never terminated one person that they didn't know it was coming. I mean, you work with people, and you put them on a PIP, and you explain to them, hey, this is not the end of the world, but we need to do these things over the upcoming weeks, or you're not going to work here anymore. So if you're just open and honest, it doesn't have to be, the surprise thing. Oh, what do you mean you're firing me? I'm out here working. If you're just open and honest with people, you're going to get different results.
So, last question then. What is your biggest go to market confession?
Truly, in my heart of hearts, I believe that you can go to market way better in anything that you do if you're honest with yourself on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and you write it down. You can't just say, I'm going to do this. You write it down in your own handwriting, and you hold yourself accountable. I'm in a relatively new position, executive vice president of a BPO out of South Africa here in North America, and I took this position so that I can grow this market. I am doing things that I have not done in years, and but I wrote everything that I do every day. All the people out there that say I hate cold calling, it's not below me. I'm a senior executive and I do my cold calls. My commitment to myself is every single day I make 5 new connections every day, and hopefully somebody out there is going to be, one of my next. That every day 5 connections. So what is that over 5 days? What is that over a month? What is that over a year? You've got to hold yourself accountable. So my biggest go-to-market confession is, um, the will. Everybody wants to win. Everybody. I've not met, the bum on the street didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to be a bum. Some bad shit happened to these people to get there. The will to win means absolutely nothing without the will to prepare. And that's where so many people fall short, is that they want to be successful, they want to sell a lot of shit, they want to make money, they want to go to President's Club, You know, this world's not lacking for wants. This world is lacking for people that roll up their sleeves and get shit done.
You've been listening to GTM Confessions. If you love what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. And don't forget to tell a friend.